Hi guys, so today we did vocabulary and literary terms and the vocabulary introductory story in our reading writing workshop. We'll start with vocabulary words. First word is acquaintance. An acquaintance is someone you know but is not your friend. So maybe it's the guy that you see every time you go to the grocery store. Maybe it's the mailman who brings the mail to your house. Maybe it's someone who works in the corner store and you pass by and see him every day. Maybe it's the person that you pay at the cash register and you see the person every time you go to the store. Maybe it's a librarian at the library. It's someone that you know but you are not friends with. Okay? Joe talked to his new acquaintance Tony in order to get to know him better. Okay, so acquaintance is someone that you know but is not a close friend. Okay, cautiously. The word cautiously means to do something with care. It shows Eric gently and cautiously touching the owl's feathers. He's careful when he touches the owl. Okay, all right. Complementary. Complementary is something that goes together. It makes something whole or it makes something complete. It means that they belong together. Here our example is peanut butter and jelly. Peanut butter and jelly go together. Rain boots and an umbrella go together. Salt and pepper go together. Um, let's see. Apples and bananas go together. Things that are complementary go together, like a pail and a shovel when you go to the beach and you shovel the sand and you put it in the pail. These are things that go together. All right? Complementary. To make something whole or complete. Jumble. A jumble is a confused mixture or condition. Here, it's a jumble of masks and snorkels tangled together in the bottom of the boat. They're all thrown together, all mixed up together. Okay, this is a jumble. Again, a confused mixture or condition. So when things are all mixed up together. You know, I used the example in class today of how when you plug in your TV to the wall and your receiver is plugged in and your DVD player is plugged in, maybe your PlayStation is plugged in, and all the cords are jumbled up together behind the TV, all mixed up and confusing. Okay, the next word we have is logical. We use logical a lot, especially when we're talking about writing and how we should write things in a logical order. The word logical means the word logical means makes sense and is based on reason. So it's something that makes sense. Logical means to make sense. When we say logical order, we mean in an order that makes sense. That's why we use it when we talk about writing. We say that we should write in an order that makes sense in logical order. On a multiple choice test, the girl tried to figure out the most logical answers. Okay, so she tried to pick the answer that made the most sense. Scornfully. Scornfully is to say or do something in a way that shows you dislike or are making fun of something. Here it says the mother spoke scornfully to her son about his bad study habits. So when she spoke to him, she showed that she did not like the bad study habits that he had. Scrounging. The word scrounging means to dig through something. Tina saw the cat scrounging through the overflowing trash can. Scrounging means that you are trying to look for something and you're having difficulty doing it. Like, say, for instance, if you have a really big bag and there's lots of stuff in your bag and you have a jumbled mess in your bag, you're trying to dig through looking for your keys and you can't find them. It's difficult to find. You would be scrounging in your bag for your keys. All right, the last word is trustworthy. Trustworthy means to be reliable, means you are worthy of trust. Someone can trust you. Our example is when you are mountain climbing, it is good to have a trustworthy partner to help you up a cliff. someone that you can trust. You are counting on them to help pull you up, so it's kind of important that you're able to trust them. All right, let's read the story at the library. It's our vocabulary story for the week. All right, at the library. Rick Dodson admired the pink and orange sky as he waved goodbye to Miss Rio and locked the library door. As the sun began its descent behind the Blue Ridge Mountains, Rick started walking to his office to collect his jacket. Seeing a jumble of books on the reading table, he sighed and began to gather them into a neat pile. Remember, we said jumble is a confused mixture, so the books were all mixed up on the table. No, he stated firmly, and returned the books to the table. Not tonight. The librarian never left any books out, but today was his birthday, which meant a brisk walk to the Cupcake Cafe for a birthday treat before it closed at 5:30 p.m. That evening, as he sat as he sat at home in his book-filled living room, Rick thought about the old friends who had called to wish him happy birthday. If only this job had not required him to move halfway across the country. After 6 months here, he had made more than one new acquaintance, but no real friends yet. Remember, we said an acquaintance is someone you know, but not your friend. Books are my friends, he thought, which reminded him of the books sitting on the table at the library. I might as well go back tonight and shelve them, he decided. He entered the library and flicked on the lights. Immediately he noticed the book Small World face down on the floor. What's going on? He muttered as he bent down and cautiously lifted up the book. Carefully lifted up the book. Ah, he yelled and dropped the book. Four miniature figures scrambled out of the way as the book landed on the floor with a thud. Mr. Dodson, exclaimed a breathless voice, we are enchanted to make your acquaintance. What? Who? Rick stammered. We're the Bookers. I'm William, this is Emily, and our children, Harry and Clementine. By the way, happy birthday. You know it's my birthday? Naturally, we read your file when you arrived 6 months ago. It's only logical that we would want to learn about the new librarian. It only makes sense that we would want to learn about the new librarian. You were scrounging through my files, Rick said. Remember, scrounging means to dig through. That means they were looking through his files. Collapsing into a nearby chair, he rubbed his eyes, but the tiny figures were still there, looking at him expectantly. Suddenly, the nimble Bookers began shimmying up the table. We're absolutely trustworthy, Emily assured him. She means they can be trusted. Haven't you heard of Bookers? William asked. Every library has Bookers. We ensure everything runs smoothly, said Emily. Seen any mice around? They love to gnaw on everything. Rick slowly shook his head. I do nightly rodent patrols, Harry stated proudly. Those mice run at the sight of me, he added scornfully. Remember, scornfully means to say or do something in a way that shows that you dislike it or are making fun. Do your chairs ever squeak? Inquired Clementine. No, that's because we oil them. Rick considered the past 6 months. He hadn't seen one mouse, his chairs never squeaked, and his pencils were never dull. The pencils, he asked. We sharpen them nightly, William replied. But why? Asked Rick. Look around, exclaimed William. We work and read. Bookers and librarians are complementary. We belong together. They make each other complete. To be honest, Mr. Dodson, said Emily, we wanted to meet you because we thought we could be friends. Rick Dodson grinned. Call me Rick. And I'd love to be friends, he said. Rick eventually made other new friends, but he still spent many evenings with the Bookers. He bought a toy car for Harry's rodent patrol, and he read scary stories aloud to Clementine. Every year on his birthday, he brought cupcakes for his friends to share with him. All right, so that's our vocabulary story. Let's move on to the literary terms. Our first literary term this week is visualize. When you visualize, you picture in your mind the plot events, the characters, and the setting. Okay, you use the description in the story to help you visualize. Should write in your notebook. Visualize when you read a story, picturing the plot events, characters, and setting in your mind. Okay? All right. Next word for literary terms this week, point of view. We've taken point of view before. You finished telling me. All right, we've talked about point of view before. Every story has a narrator, and the narrator is the person who tells the story. Sorry, okay, so the point of view is just like in our story when the author tells his point of view and he talks about how he thinks or feels through his description of events or characters. Every story has a point of view, a narrator, or a person who tells the story. The narrator's point of view tells you how that narrator thinks or feels. Maybe the narrator is someone in the story, maybe the narrator is someone outside the story. Okay? When the narrator uses words like he, she, or they, then they are what we call a third person narrator. That means they are not a character in the story. The person telling the story is not a character in the story. When the narrator uses words like I, mine, me, my, then we know that the narrator is one of the characters in the story, and he is telling the story from what we call first person narration. Okay? All right, so we have point of view is how the narrator thinks or feels about the characters or events in the story. And we have first person narrator. This is a character in the story telling the story. We also have third person narrator, and that's a character outside the story telling the story to you. They use words like he, she, or they to describe characters. All right, next literary term for the week. Our genre this week is fantasy. A fantasy has invented characters and settings, they are made up. And of course, that means it has elements that do not exist in real life because these are characters and settings that are created in someone's imagination. We often have illustrations in a fantasy. That's to show us what the characters that are created are made up and the settings that are created and made up look like. Okay, in the story that we just read at the library, the characters, the bookers, the four small characters that fall out of the book, are made up characters. That's why we see pictures of them to help us understand what these characters look like. Okay, so a fantasy includes invented characters and settings and has elements that could not exist in real life, like these four little characters, miniature people, are not real, they are made up. Okay? All right, I believe that's our last. Let's check. Nope, context clues. We've talked about context clues before. When we don't understand the meaning of a word, we use the words around the word, like phrases or sentences around the word, or even clues in the same sentence that the word is in to help us understand the meaning. So we use context clues to help us figure out the meaning of an unfamiliar word. Okay? So we use nearby phrases and sentences to figure out the meaning of an unfamiliar word. Be sure you write these literary terms in your notebook along with your vocabulary and spelling for the week. The story that we are doing this week is called The Cricket in Times Square. Now, I told the students today when they read this story, this is your homework tonight to read The Cricket in Times Square. I told them when they read this story to read half of it, take a break, and then go back and read the other half. Otherwise, it's a really long story, and you'll probably get bored reading it because it takes so long to read it. So take your time, read part, take a break, and then go back and finish the other half. All right, we will do the story together tomorrow in class. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.